Welcome to our sixth theme for the Esther Yoga School 200-hour teacher training. This is the third theme of Module 2, and I've decided to mix it up a little bit. So normally what we would do in this theme is we would go deeper into pranayama, mantra, and mudra. But I've decided from this year we're going to do things a little bit differently. And we're going to jump off of the theory work and out of the textbook books and straight into some juicy practical work. So don't worry about the little bits and pieces that you feel are lacking from this lecture. What I'm doing is I'm taking a block out of the retreat, putting it into Module 2, taking that block out and putting it into the retreat. So everything is still covered and you will get all of the wonderful knowledge that you require for the certification. But why I've taken this liberty in the course for the first time in the 7 years that I've been teaching it is because I want you to, I've been listening to feedback, I've been watching how people are interacting with the material, and it's important that this course grows and evolves on its own to match the needs of its students. So for Module 1 and 2, you've been working a lot on the theory. Yes, you've had some pranayamas that you needed to practice, you've been researching postures, and hopefully you've been attending your classes and signing them off. But at this present point in time, I want you to jump a little bit more onto the mat and get a little bit more hands-on. So we are going to be diving today into sequencing 101. And you are going to be learning how to put together a very basic sequence. And I'm going to provide you with sequence guidelines. Please don't think that this is even the tip of the iceberg of sequencing. This is why the retreat is so important, so that we can get together and work hands-on now that the theory work is out of the way. Yes, still a little bit of theory to come, but more interactive, hands-on teaching, doing the work. So on the retreat, we'll learn different forms of sequence structure, such as peaking and dropping, working through cyclical themes, working through different kinds of sequencing for different levels of students, hands-on adjustments, posture work, using props, special needs, all those really, really exciting topics. So for this specific next 2 weeks, we're keeping it simple. I don't want you to get excited about music and props. I don't want you to get excited about using too much of your theoretical knowledge unless you want to. I just want you to keep it clean and neat and do what I provide you with. Put together a basic class structure, simple. Don't even worry about, am I putting it in the right order, or what must come next, or must it flow, or must it, I don't want you to worry about any of that. I just want you to take what I give you, put it together and teach it. Then write a feedback on it. All right, so keep it simple, nice, and accessible. I'm going to be pulling up a screen now for you. And we're going to jump into the PowerPoint presentation together. So here we go, beginning with sequencing and structure. Finally, we're here and we're getting an opportunity to get nice and hands-on with maybe some friends or some family, loved ones, etc. All right, so let's have a look. This theme, I want it to be very practical and very interactive. I want you to have your pens and your papers and your kokies, your mats on the floor, your asana manuals there, a little bit of Google on the sideline maybe, and really just dive into it. Dive into your asana manual, do some research, do some work. The asana manual is a fantastic jumping point for teachers in training, and it will serve you through the rest of your life, but it is not the be all and end all of asana. You're going to be learning more and more and more through the classes that you attend, and even more through the classes that you teach. So for the next 2 weeks, this is your homework assignment. You're going to put it all together, and then you're going to send it to me. All right, yes, I've already said that. So we're going to look at the moment, we're going to start with categories of asanas. And these are kind of categories that have evolved over the past few decades of teachers teaching asana work, and we're realizing that certain postures can be categorized into different arenas. Some postures overlap and crisscross, and that's okay. You don't have to box everything. But it's just to have a general idea as to what kind of category a certain posture might go into. Again, we go much deeper into this on retreat. So, and then we're going to look at one model of sequence structure, just a simple model that you're going to use for your assignment. Then you'll put one together on your own, and you're going to teach it, and you're going to get feedback. So here are some asana categories, and I'm sure we could maybe even think of more to add in here, and it's definitely grown and evolved for me over my time teaching. And then I've added the Sanskrit names because I want you to start getting used to using Sanskrit rather than just defaulting to English pose names because it's easier. So if you don't know the names, please go and actually research them. So as I'm reading it, if you don't know what the name of the posture is, pause, look at your manual or quick Google search. What is the posture that I'm referring to? Make a note, either if you print out this PDF or if you just want to do it in your book. But don't just listen to Sanskrit and not know what I'm saying. It's like learning a new language. And if I'm just saying words and you're not understanding what they are, you're not progressing. So here's some examples of standing postures. Tadasana, Trikonasana, and Virabhadrasana 1, 2, and 3. So what do we think of when we think of standing poses? Obviously, we're standing, we're on our feet, maybe one foot, maybe both feet. Maybe the legs are straight, maybe they're bent. But I want you now to pause the video for a moment. And before I continue, write down some keywords that you feel relate to the energy around standing postures. In other words, are standing postures calming or energizing? Are they, I don't want to give too many words. I want you to come up with some. But there's ones you can start with. What is the energy? What is the feel behind standing poses? Look at some of standing poses. Look at the warriors. Look at Trikonasana. Look at mountain pose. Look at some of these postures that are done in standing and ask, how do they feel? Are they invigorating, strengthening, calming, soothing? What is the energy behind them? Just write 1 or 2 keywords. So please pause this video now, and then we'll continue with the next after you've got some keywords. So I like to, hopefully you've done that exercise. I like to think of standing poses as very strengthening, very rooting, very earthing and grounding. They work primarily on root chakra, and so it's our connection of the body to the earth. It's how we stand, it's how we walk, it's how we connect to life. Do we do it strongly? Do we do it with a bit of a wobble? How do we step forward? Do we step forward confidently? Do we step forward, with a little bit of reservation? You can tell a lot about a person and their body by, or their life, by the internal world through standing postures. And when people, you'll find that certain yogis gravitate to certain categories. Some people will love back bends, but they might hate standing poses, for example. Some people love forward folds. Some people prefer back bends. Some people really despise balances. Some people love twists. So this will tell you a lot about people. And always remember what my teacher told me. It's the postures that we avoid the most that we need the most. So I like, with my spine, I love back bends. I love going into back bends. But when I go into forward folds or forward bends, counter poses, my spine kind of always has this little crick in it, and it's like a little bit overly rounded, and I have to constantly work on projecting my spine straight and lifting my chest. And it's not my favorite thing, but I probably need that more. So the same thing, standing poses. A person might be very fluid in their twists and love lying on the floor, but perhaps they need a little bit more rajas, a little bit more activity, a little bit more vuma, a little bit more oomph. through the standing postures, So if people are addicted to standing poses, maybe they need the energy of the supine and the prone poses to cool them down. So again, we must always keep in our awareness the equilibrium of yin and yang, ha and ta. What do people gravitate to? What do they need more of? And as yoga teachers, we try and bring a balance of categories into class. You don't have to bring every single category into a class. You don't have to have all standing, then seated, supine, prone, twists, balances, etc. You might just have a couple that you extract out, or maybe you're workshopping, balances today, or you're working maybe on a cleansing sequence or a detox sequence and using a lot of twists, maybe a grounding sequence, so you're sticking on the floor a lot, maybe an uplifting sequence, so you're doing a lot of standing poses, a lot of arms in the air kind of things. So always keep in your mind, what is my intention? What is the energy behind it that I want to help my students to achieve? And maybe what is my theme as well, if you're having a theme. So these are things to bring into your awareness. We don't just put postures into a class because, okay, you can do that, but in Ishta Yoga, we're very primarily focused on the energetics behind things, the why, not just the what. Putting postures together can be done by anybody. A gym instructor can do that. But a yoga teacher must keep the yoga in mind, the energetic behind things, the chakras, Ayurveda, the seasons, weather, mood, all of these things. So seated postures, Padmasana, Ardha Matsendrasana, Gomukhasana. So some examples of seated poses. Now pause the video again and write down some keywords that you associate perhaps with seated postures, comparing that to the standing category. All right, hopefully you've done that. So seated postures are very much also grounding and anchoring, but perhaps not in such a rejustic way as many of the standing poses can be. Seated postures, you can probably hold for a longer period of time without getting tired and exhausted. Remember that with standing poses, people tire very quickly. And so that's okay if you're wanting a really powerful kicking class and you want to get in, maybe fitness as your focus, or getting the heart rate up. But with seated postures, they're probably a bit easier to hold over longer periods of time, can be used very nicely for yin yoga. You would not really use standing poses for yin yoga because the point of yin is to come to a place of cool receptivity, not burning heat. Okay, yin doesn't just mean holding for a long period of time. It's an entire philosophy. It's cooling, it's receptive, it's introverting. The standing postures are very masculine, very out there. Seated postures, a little bit more feminine. And remember that asana began, we assume through our studies and research of the archaeology, all asanas began as sitting poses. That's why the word asana means seat. Because the asanas were designed as meditation positions for people who were doing long periods of meditation. And from there, the system evolved into different movements. So sitting is grounding, it's cooling, it's accessible, but not always for every person. Remember, hip injuries, knee injuries, we might need to use props and things that we'll still learn about. Supine poses. Now remember, supine means on your back. So remember the Sanskrit word. What is the Sanskrit word for on your back? Come on. Supta. Supta. So supine poses could be Shavasana, lying on your back. Remember, Shavasana does not mean relaxation. It means corpse pose. It's a posture, lying on your back, arms up. Sarvangasana, Ananda Balasana. What is the energy of a supine pose, do you think? Now compare it to standing, compare it to seated. Seated might be a little bit more relaxed, but you're still alert. Your spine is still straight, your head is still in the sky. Compare that to supine postures. What do you think is the difference? Hopefully you paused and you wrote a few words down. Supine postures are extremely grounding. They can be relaxing, but very often we're doing inversion work there. So like our legs are higher than the heart. Remember that an inversion is any time the heart is higher than the head, or the hips or the legs are higher than the heart. So we're inverting the flow of blood and prana. So they are lovely postures to work with. And especially if your students are getting tired and you still want them to work, you can do supine work, and you can do a lot of core work there. You can do twisting work, inversion work, back bend work. There's a lot that can be done in supine poses. Prone poses have a similar effect to supine, except with supine, you're on your back and your chest is open and exposed to the sky. So it's very freeing, it's very liberating, it's very expanding, but it can feel vulnerable. Prone poses, lying on your stomach, it's almost recollection of childhood. It's calming, it's soothing, your energy feels safe and closed off. You can do a lot here as well. You're working a lot on back strength and maybe twists as well, back bends. So a few things can happen in prone poses, quite a lot. You can do an entire class lying on your stomach, an entire class lying on your back. So some examples are Bhujangasana, Anantasana, and Shalabhasana. I hope you're translating these names. Twists. Here's some examples. Parivrita Parigasana. So with Parivrita Parigasana, it's a kneeling posture. So remember, some of these things are crossing over, interlacing. The same with Bhujangasana above. It's a prone pose, but it's also a back bend. Anantasana is prone, but it's also a balance. Shalabhasana is prone, but it's also a twist. So the categories, they do blend over a little bit sometimes. But twist, Parivrita Parigasana, Parivrita Shalabhasana. Often when you hear the word Parivrita, it means what? From your Sanskrit, Parivrita, pause. I want you to go look it up if you don't know. Revolved. Good. Twists, what is the energy behind twist? Pause the video, make some notes. All right, so twists are very freeing, very opening. Most students love twists, unless they've got injuries that prevent them from enjoying twist. People enjoy the freedom of a twist, and it often liberates and opens up stuck energy in the spine, in the abdomen, the chest, the shoulders, the neck. It's a lovely way for the spine to move, and if done well, it can be a really best friend for you your whole life. Twists are very often detoxing and cleansing because of the massaging effect that they have on the organs. A nice little stimulation of blood flow to the organs and pressure placed in organs such as the liver to help with detoxification. The colon, the digestive system getting massaged so that peristaltic movements are easy for the body to help with elimination. So after twists, people will very often run through the loo, and twists, like many postures, must not be done with a full bladder or bowels. In fact, in most of the yogic texts, it says that you must always do yoga asana on an empty stomach. You shouldn't eat for at least 2 hours before a class. If you do, something very light, very easily assimilated, but should always be done on an empty stomach. And your bowels and bladder must be empty. The same rule applies, I was going to bring this in under inversions, but the same rule applies to a few other things. Colds and flu. If a person has cold or flu, they should be actually just not going to an asana class. They should be at home, resting, maybe doing some yoga nidra, but no, the body should not be exposed, because asana, it purifies, it cleanses, yes, but it also amplifies. So asana can be a mirror of reflection. It can also be a magnifying glass of expansion. So, you know, it can sometimes, if you're feeling angry before an asana class, it can inflame the anger before it cleanses it. Because how does cleansing work? We've got to bring the toxin to the surface so that it is released. Colds and flu, people should actually just not do asana. It's better not to. That doesn't mean people are going to obey that rule, but if they do, they should go very, very light and very gently into their practice. Also, with menstruation as well, there are some rules around that. No strong abdominal poses and no inversions. We'll cover this more on our retreat. Next category, balances. Vrikshasana, Garudasana, and Natarajasana. I've realized that when I'm looking now at some of these pose names, there's a category that I didn't actually put into this, because you start to realize that categories can become quite refined. So a category that I left out that you might want to put in is binds. Okay, it's not necessarily a category, it's why I didn't put it in. But there is an entire corpus of postures that are binding. Most often they also incorporate twists, and they're often seated or standing. So you see how it can get a little bit too much. We don't need too many categories. But you could think of a category as being some binds. And then hip openers is another one that I didn't put in here. Reason being is because we could start saying everything, neck openers, shoulder openers, but hip openers are quite a popular thing for people to do. And maybe shoulder openers, neck openers, and things like that are subcategories, we could say. Again, I don't want to get too much into the labels of things. These are not traditional labels, they're modern. So these are balances. Now, what do you feel is the energy behind a balance? Give it some thought, and then we'll go into it together. So balancing postures do just that. They focus on not only physical balance, but also mental balance as well. So it's training the mind into a state of calmness and serenity, into a place of focus and concentration. And the drishti is required for balance to happen, the focal point, not only a physical drishti, but a mental drishti as well. More on that later. Balances, as I say, are balancing and sometimes challenging. They can be calming, they can be invigorating. Arm poses, things like chaturanga and mayurasana, so very often strengthening of the arms. It's a category that people don't bring in a lot, especially in beginner classes, but later on in a more, I don't like using the word advancing because it often is associated with ego, but in deepening practices, people then start to focus more on arms, arm balances, things like that. Inversions, Shirsasana, Sarvangasana, Uttanasana, and Balasana. Make sure you're translating all these names as I'm teaching. Say them, listen to them. Inversions, as I mentioned, we must be cautious with inversions when it comes to having people with high blood pressure and women who are on their menstrual cycle and even pregnancy as well. We'll cover all of these contraindications on our retreat. So what is the energy behind an inversion? What do you think? Might take a little bit of time. It depends on the inversion as well. So inversions can be energizing. Headstand and shoulder stand, they feel calming at the time, but they actually have an energizing effect on the body. The same with Uttanasana. It's very calming at the time, but it actually energizes us afterward. So inversions feel lovely at the time, soothing, calming, very often, like we can just let go and release a lot of stuff. That they have a lovely energizing effect because of the upward movement of the prana. Balasana is the go-to posture for whenever people need to rest in a class. And we should always remind our students that they can go into Balasana at any time. And especially new students. When you know that a student is new, go immediately welcome them, teach them Balasana, and then they can feel safe to go into it during the class. Back bends, things like Chakrasana, also called Urdhva Dhanurasana, Dhanurasana, Bhujangasana. These are examples of back bends. We also call back bends heart openers. So because of this lovely expansion of the chest, but we must remember that there are different parts of the back. We have a lower, middle, and upper back, and different postures affect different areas of the spine. Back bends are just like that. They're opening of the heart, they're expansive, they sometimes require a lot of bravery and courage. And so when you go into back bends or you're guiding students into back bends, keep in mind not only physical injuries, but also it can be quite an emotional thing. And very often people have emotional catharsis during asana classes, during yoga practice, because we're targeting different parts of the body that have different energetic and genetic memory as well. Kneeling postures. Kneeling, we could equate into the seated poses as well, but I did put it in here as a subcategory. Vajrasana, Simhasana are two examples of kneeling postures. If people struggle with kneeling, rather just get them to sit down or to use blocks and props, as we will learn in future. Forward folds, they can kind of also sometimes go into the inversion category. Paschimottanasana is a forward fold. Uttanasana is a forward fold and an inversion. Forward folds are obviously the counterpose to back bends, and the back bend is the counterpose to the forward fold. Always remember the rule of thumb: what we do to one side of the body, we must do to the other. And we have different planes of motion: left and right, front and back, side and side, up and down. So what we do to the one side, we must always do to the other. Yes. So if you hyper rotate the leg, then you must move the opposite direction. We'll learn about this on retreat, but just a simple example here. If you're doing a back bend example, you're coming up, standing Urdhva Hastasana, back bend, you then fold forward and go into Uttanasana. So you're always doing things with the spine. What you do to the one, you do to the other. Same with the legs, the hips, the arms, every part of the body. Balance. Forward folds unlike back bends, which are very expansive and opening and brave and bold and sometimes vulnerable. Forward folds are like a tortoise going into a shell. It's very safe, it's very soothing, very calming, sometimes challenging as well. Some people sometimes might even feel a bit claustrophobic down there, you know, in this confined space, so keep that in mind. But forward folds are a safe and very calming space to be in. So as I say, categories can overlap. Consider the energetics behind each. Later on, we're going to learn about form versus function. But for now, keep these simple thoughts in your mind. How do postures affect people? For example, is it a cold and rainy and wet day? Do people need strong, energetic work? You don't have to teach vinyasa to make a class strong and energetic. All right, I want yoga teachers to start realizing that there's more to life than just getting on the mat and doing vinyasa over and over and over. Vinyasa is beautiful, it has a great place, but it's not the be all and end all. And in fact, it's not even traditional yoga. All right, vinyasa is a much later addition to things, these whole sun salutation sequences that people are going through. Very, very new, very modern. Traditionally, postures are held for extended periods of time, and the only time you flow is to move from the one to the other, or in Kriya movements where the movements are repetitive. Okay, so vinyasa, don't think vinyasa is what yoga asana should be. It's a very modern adaptation to a Western culture that worships fitness and cardiovascular movements. So it's not the be all and end all of everything. So you can do heating and invigorating classes by, for example, holding people in Navasana, boat pose. Okay, you're not having to do any flow there. You can hold people in leg postures for periods of time and get them to go deeper into the same leg posture each round. Round number 1, hand on hip. Round number 2, arm to the sky. Round number 3, extend the arm, uttita. And you're taking them deep into the same posture 3 times. Really invigorating, really hot. So remember, vinyasa is not the only way to generate heat. Anytime the body is moving or being stimulated, it will get warm. But what about if it's a really hot day outside? Then, now we know the energy behind the postures. So maybe people have had a hot day and they're feeling frustrated and irritable. Inversions, forward folds, soothing supine or prone postures are going to give a lot of that to people. Maybe some twists. If people have been sitting at the desk all day. So always think of the function behind the posture, not just the form, not just the shape. Why am I teaching this? What energetic effect will it have on people? Any person can teach physical movement. That is the role of an instructor. A teacher is there to teach people certain skills and how to practice the art, science, philosophy of yoga. We're not interested in being gym monkeys. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, sequencing 101. Okay, we're keeping this simple for now. Don't get excited, just keep it simple. All right, so a class storyboard. As I said, we'll go deeper into this later on retreat, but things to consider, like with a story, like with a book, a class must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Are we teaching themes? We'll have a look at some themes just now. Is there a theme around today's class, or are you just going to teach a sequence? Either one is fine, but know what you're doing and why. Now, in the beginning of a class, what might this actually look like? Well, we welcome people to the class. Who is new to the class? What is your level of experience? Are there injuries? Who's pregnant? Look at the different age categories, different body sizes. Levels of fitness and experience are important here. Introducing yourself as the teacher, setting up the space. We'll still cover a lot of these finer details together, but I just want you to stimulate the mental processes behind what does the beginning of the class look and feel like. Then, once you've opened the class, however you want to do that, with a chant or an intention setting or a welcome, a breathing exercise, a visualization, a focus, a mantra, we then are going to begin with the warm-ups, okay? So don't concern yourself too much about the stuff that I've just flown through. Just keep it simple for now. Warm-ups. So think to yourself, well, when we're doing the warm-ups, what are we warming up for? Am I teaching a back bend class today where we're focusing a lot on back bend, or is it going to be hips? Are we going to be doing a lot of leg work? Are we working the joints? So what are the warm-ups for? If you're working on hips and legs today, then spending 15 minutes warming up just the spine and the neck is not going to help the hips and the legs. Yes, we can warm up the whole body. We must warm up the whole body, but we're focusing on, do we have a theme? Do we have something that we are focusing on? You may not. But don't just warm up without thinking of the why. Okay, we must thread it all together. So what are we working on in the class? What is the weather? What is the time of the day? What is the level of experience? How long is your warm-up? If it's a hot summer's day and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you don't need a long warm-up. You might not even need a warm-up. You might just be able to move into your sequence slowly and then pick it up, because people have been moving their body the whole day and it's hot. But 6 o'clock in the morning in winter, completely different story. Your sequence might be the same sequence, but your way of getting into the sequence is going to differ. So these are things to consider: weather, time of day, energy levels, levels of experience, and how long you need to spend. A warm-up can be 3, 4, 5 minutes. A warm-up can be 15 minutes. You can spend a whole class doing warm-ups, especially if people are new to posture work. If it's cold, wintry weather, I sometimes pause a class every 15, 20 minutes, and then we do more wrists and more feet and more necks just to get the circulation moving again. Okay, so there's no rule that it only has to be at the beginning. Then we have the middle of the class. This is what we call the body of the class, and we'll look at that now. So this is the content. Then the end. Cool downs, they also depend on you and your teaching style and what you want from that class. If it's a cold winter's day, you might not want to do too much cooling down because people's body will get cold very quickly. You might want to take them from the sequence, do a couple of twists or an inversion, and then get them with a blanket on for further work, shavasana, meditation, etc. But if people are really tired and they've had a rough, not a, a rough day, or they've had a really intense physical class, then take time to cool them down. It's very nice. It's very important. We don't want to leave them in a rajasic state when they leave. Remember, at the end of the day, yoga, it must be sattvic in its approach, not rajasic. Okay? Their whole life is maybe rajasic. So bring in the rajas. That's good, because people also live some tamastic lives. But we don't want to leave them rajasic when they leave. They mustn't be wired. They must leave sattvic. So how long would the cool downs be? Take into account weather, your intention. Are you going to do only a shavasana at the end? Always do a shavasana. Never. There's never a day in your life where you leave shavasana out. Not even one day in your life when you leave shavasana. But are you only going to do a shavasana, or are you going to do something after shavasana? Pranayama, meditation, yoga nidra, chanting, etc. Remember from module 1, the 8 limbs of yoga, asana is the beginning, and then there's more. Then there's more, internalizing the senses. Pranayama, single pointed focus, dharana, meditation, dhyana. So there's more. Asana is preparation for meditation. So if you are only teaching asana, then we're falling into the trap of becoming a gym culture again. There's enough gym, enough Pilates, enough CrossFit for people to get their fitness in. This is not the yogic path. Asana is there to cleanse, strengthen, purify, and prepare the body for meditation. So at the beginning of your yoga teaching career, you might feel intimidated to teach meditation because you might not even be meditating yet or still exploring that, and that's okay. But doing some mantra, doing some pranayama with people, it will give them, they're prepped and they're primed and they're ready for it. Don't deny them that gift. After the asana session, okay, we've just discussed. Good. So let's have a look at warm-ups. Now, in your asana manual, there are some small little series there. For example, I'll give you one. There's a scale series. There's Pavana Muktasana series, okay, which you also learned about in module 1 and also in your manual. So here's part of your assignment. I want you to go and look through your manual and make a list of all the sequences and series. You can highlight them, circle them, write them down, write them on the back page, put them on a separate paper, whatever you want. But all the series and the sequences that you think in your manual could categorize as a warm-up. Don't worry if it's right or wrong. You must look at it. You're intelligent. You're a yoga teacher in training. And you must go, do I think that I could use this as a warm-up or even adjust it to be a warm-up? So that's one thing I want you to go and do. Then you're going to pick one of these for your assignment. I want you to pick one of these for your assignment. Do not make up your own warm-ups just yet. I want to see that you're engaging with your manual and working through it. So say you pick the scale series or one of the, there's many lovely ones in your manual, there's many. Pick one of these for your assignment. Then consider, who are you going to teach for this assignment? Okay. It's nice if you can get a few bodies together, some friends or family, rope in some of the colleagues. It's nice if you can get a few bodies together to practice with, so that you can get experience of different bodies without having the fear or the judgment, because these are people who are here to help you. So who are you teaching? What are their ages? What are their levels of fitness, yogic experience? Have they any spiritual background, or is this completely new and fresh to them? We don't want to terrify them and so that they run away if they're brand new to yoga. So where are they in the scheme of things? Or have they been practicing meditation and yoga for long, and maybe they're ready for more of the juiciness? Are there any themes that you would like to follow? Okay, we're still going to come up to the themes. Notice the weather, the time of day, etc. Very important, weather, time of day, it is all Ayurveda. The season, it's Ayurveda. And so if it's a cold winter's day, invigorating work is the best. Hot summer's day, cooling work is the best. It's not the rule, but it's to help bring the balance of the doshas. Spring and autumn are vata seasons, so grounding and anchoring work is wonderful. How do you want to open your class? All right? Are you just going to start moving? How are you going to go about this? Do you have an intention setting at the beginning? Are you chanting? Are you introducing the theme? Okay, so just consider the opening of your class. Make some notes, write it down, prepare it. Good. Then, sorry, there's noises around my house. Now, the next one is the body of the class. So for this assignment, don't worry at all. Don't concern yourself with the am I doing it in the right order? You know, am I going to hurt somebody? I highly doubt you will, because you're brand new to this and you're going to be very cautious already just through being nervous. So don't worry about am I doing the right order. What we're really wanting you to do is to start somewhere. It's like being an artist or a chef. You're not going to expect everything to just be a masterpiece straight away. Teaching is an ongoing art, and you've got to start somewhere. So start with the small little Lego blocks and play with them and put them in different orders and build them and break them down and make mistakes, and then you will enhance and develop your skill sets over time. So for now, just put that aside. Am I going to do the wrong thing or the right thing? Just teach postures. Teach them carefully, teach them gently, teach them sacredly, teach them joyfully, teach them with a laugh, teach them with a smile, and just start to get people to enjoy and step into yoga, and get yourself to enjoy being on the mat of the teacher and hearing your own voice as well. Very important. Okay, so stick to the below for now. After the warm-ups, I want you to do the following. This is a guideline. I want you to pick 3 standing poses, 3 prone poses, 2 twists, 1 balance, and 2 supine poses. That's it. Okay. Please take counter poses into consideration. A lot of that will be written in your manual. Okay, but it just makes sense as well. If you're doing back bends, you must do an inversion. Most of you know, if you've been attending classes, you hopefully have, that after doing a cobra pose, you should go into a child's pose. Yeah. So it's just inverting the spines like that. Hopefully by module 2, if you've done module 1 before this, you've already nearly got your 50-hour log sheet signed off. If you are just starting at module 2 and you're coming to module 1 later, then make sure that you are getting those hours logged in. All right, so let me know if you need any guidance along the way. Remember that if you are working with a theme, you must stick with that theme. So don't just bring a theme up at the beginning and say, oh, today our theme is hips, and then just do a million other things throughout the class. If you're working with a theme, you don't have to only do those body parts, but just keep bringing the awareness back to the theme, bringing people's attention there. You might be working on, an element like an earth class or a fire class. Keep bringing people back to the theme. And then don't worry about anything else. Don't even stress about anything else. I want you to keep it simple for now and just have fun with this. Then the end of your class. Is a cool down required? Okay, do you need to do a cool down? Then I want you to prep a 5-minute Shavasana from your manual. So if a cool down is required, how long? What is your cool down going to consist of? Prep a 5-minute Shavasana from your manual. So you've got 1,000,000 in your manual of those guided meditations at the end of every lesson. Pick one, maybe it goes with your theme, hopefully, if you've got a theme. If not, you can do a guided relaxation. You might not do, you might not do anything during Shavasana. You might just play music. You might just keep silent. You might pick a song. You might let everyone just lie there quietly. Okay, but I want you to consciously have a 5-minute Shavasana prepped. And don't just put them there for no reason. I want you to tell me in your assignment why you're doing that specific thing during Shavasana, or you can write your own thing. And then optional, you can choose one pranayama after class, about 5-minute long pranayama. So far, we've done Ujjayi pranayama, we've done Nadi Shodhana pranayama, we've done Kapalabhati pranayama. So pick a pranayama that you are familiar with or one that you like, and then teach that for 5 minutes at the end of the class if you want to. And then bring the theme to the conclusion. Okay, bring it back. If we started with an intention, we must end with an intention. If you start with a theme, you must end with a theme. If you've asked your students to set their own intention, guide them back to their intention. How do you want to close? Do you chant? Do you say a blessing? Do you say a prayer? And then at the end, obviously check in with the students. Make eye contact. How was your class? How are you feeling? Where are you at? Make sure, check, are they grounded? Are they still spaced out? Get their hands on the floor. If they're not grounded, get them some water. Get them to talk. Some people might not want to. That's also great. So check in with your students, and especially the beginners. How was your class? How did you find it? Was it too easy? Was it challenging? How was that little back niggle that you have? Did you manage to work around it? Please let me know in future how I can help you. All right. A note on themes. Themes are optional, but very nice to work with. I am a theme queen. I love themes. Every week I have themed. I theme around the year, the season. It's Mother's Day, it's Easter, it's Christmas, it's the full moon, it's a zodiac sign, it's spring, it's Easter, it's someone's birthday. I love themes, and themes are just really fun. And they personally as a teacher, they allow my creativity to really shine and play, which for me as a teacher is important because that keeps me teaching. If I was bored, by now I would have left my yogic teaching career. But I can promise you now, to this day, 15 years down the line, and I've never been bored a day in my life. And I've hardly not taught a class a day in the past 15 years. Often 2, 3, 4 classes a day, sometimes more. So I've never been bored. And themes are great for me personally to allow creativity to flow. So some examples of themes. We could have body-related themes like legs, hips, core, back, our back bends. We also call them heart openers. Inversions. So you might have a specific theme. Maybe body-related themes are like digestion, okay, arthritis, excuse me, strength-based themes, flexibility-based themes, balance-based themes, etc. Body-related. Workshops. So maybe you're getting everyone together and you say, okay, today we're not going to do a sequence, we're going to do a workshop. So we're going to workshop into headstand, a shoulder stand, or a crow pose. And so we're going to do some warm-ups, and then we're going to prepare our arms, and then we're going to guide you in. And with this, we're going to get against the wall. We're going to use some straps, and we're going to do some partner work, whatever it is. Workshops are very nice, especially when you're noticing that your students are getting a bit lazy or a bit slack. So for example, maybe once or twice a year, I say to everybody, okay, it's time to polish up the Surya Namaskar, the sun salutations. Because I know that those students who've been doing sun salutations for 5, 10 years, they sometimes go like, okay, I just know this thing, and they just do the posture, they do the flow, but they're not being mindful, they're not being present, they're getting a bit sloppy with the movements. So then I say, okay, today we're workshopping Surya, and we're going to clean it up, and we're going to guide ourselves back. Are you breathing correctly? Are you doing Ujjayi breath? Are you activating your core at the right places? Are your feet the right distance, etc.? So workshopping is lovely, and people love it, especially people who've been doing yoga for a long time and beginners. So it's great. Really, really nice. And I promise you, you can clean up a lot of things like that. Workshopping a downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. You look at a person who's been doing yoga with you for ages and you go, oh my gosh, actually, needs a lot of improvement. So then you can help them in that little workshopping. And sometimes I even workshop just for 15 minutes of a class. I say, okay, stop breaking out of the sequence. We're going to workshop this thing. I see we need to work on it. Chakra themes. You can really spend the rest of your life having fun with chakra themes. You could spend a whole week on one chakra. You could spend a whole class on 7 chakras, or on 1 or 2 or 3. Lower chakras, upper chakras, heart chakra. There's so much you can do. You can bring in color, you can bring in sound, you can bring in aroma, fragrance, essential oils, animals, music. Okay, lower chakras, very maybe bass music, very tribal, very drummy, very earthy, maybe. I'm just giving ideas. Heart chakra stuff, loving, opening, upper energy centers, angelic, ethereal, classical music. These are just ideas, all right, to help you with themes. Go and research essential oils, crystals, colors of candles, visualization colors. Okay, these are modern additions to the yogic teaching sphere, but they are lovely to bring in as part of themes. I've taught 7-week, 7 chakra challenges, and I've taught entire chakra sequences in one class. And in fact, that's going to be part of your retreat assignment, is on the retreat to teach a chakra themed class. Put that to one side for the moment, but just know that it's coming. Other themes are things around myths. Okay, you could base a whole class around different myths of the different poses. This posture is named after Hanuman, the god of, stepping forward, bravery, strength, and this is why this posture is called that. Where does Virabhadrasana come from? Who was this warrior? Ardha Matsyendrasana. Who is the lord of the fishes? Who is Matsyendranath? You can bring in myths and stories into class, which I love to do. I sometimes will tell a short little few seconds of a story from that posture. And people go, wow, that's beautiful. It brings the posture to life. So go and research, go and play, go and learn. Garudasana, it means eagle pose. But Garuda is a figure from Hindu mythology. Go and research Garuda. And then go, what does the eagle mean? It means bravery, it means focus, it means strength, it means rising above the challenges. You see how you can take myth and metaphor and you can make a simple physical action magical, and you can even bring it to life if you want to. Putting people into a warrior pose, you could just put them into a warrior pose, or you could put them into a warrior pose with the intention of focusing on the spiritual mind of the warrior, of focusing on their goals, breaking out of procrastination. If you're holding people in strong postures, you can say, how much more will you be able to overcome your challenges today if you can just stay here for another 15 seconds, breathe, anchor. We can bring the postures to life. We can energize them. We can interact with them on a very personal level. Elemental themes. Whole class are around elements. Earth class, more grounding, stable. Water class, flows. Fire class, heating. Air class, light, cerebral, meditative. Lots of themes. Astrology, seasonal. Yin, vinyasa, therapeutic themes. Fitness themes, beginner themes. mixtures. Okay, so there's so much that you can do around themes. It really is endless. So here's your assignment for the next 2 weeks. I want you to design a class, minimum 30 minutes, please no longer than 1 hour. Short and sweet. Decide who you're going to teach. Is it going to be a partner, your kids, your family, a mixture of colleagues, friends? Who are you going to teach? Do you want a theme? Are you going to theme it? Or are you just going to say, I can't deal with that now, I'm just going to practice? Either way, no problem. I just want you to state what it is and why. How are you going to start the class? Okay, put some thought into it, make some notes. Go back in this lecture if you need guidance there. What warm-ups will you use and why? Now the body of the class. So don't worry about vinyasa. Don't think, how am I going to flow? Please break out of that mentality. Okay, just teach the asanas. 3 standing, blah, 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 blah. We've gone through it. So just teach the asanas. Excuse me. You can put them in the order that I gave you a couple of pages back. So you can put them in the order of 3 standing, then 3 prone, then 2 twist, 1 balance, 2 supine. That sequence that I gave you will work nicely. Or you can mix it up, okay? But don't just mix it up for the sake of doing it. Always do it with an intention. Why? Does it make sense? Does it fit in a logical order? Okay, we teach standing poses at the beginning because if we had to teach them right at the end, people are going to feel very energized and they're going to feel very adjusted and they struggle to relax. But it makes sense why we do what we do. We bring them down towards the end of the class, right? Teach the postures correctly. That's why I gave you just a few. So rather than worrying about how you're going to thread them together, which is actually not important at this time, I would rather you practice teaching them correctly and don't worry about the order. Okay, so now you've got your students in front of you, or your student, and you're teaching them Vrikshasana. I want you to teach it to them correctly. Take your time. Don't worry about is it in the correct order. Practice teaching them. You are not an instructor. Do not instruct. Teach. That means get off your mat and go and teach them how to do it. Okay? Don't just demonstrate and say, okay, now everybody, and you've got 3 family members who've never done yoga, now go into Uttita Trikonasana, and they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you're doing. Go and teach them, show them, guide them. They don't know what angle their feet must be. They don't know where their hips must be, how to work around a niggly knee, things like that. So you must teach them. You are not a yoga instructor. You are a teacher. A teacher must guide people. A teacher must pull people's knowledge up. Yes. An instructor is just a model demonstrating a class and getting people to copy them. You are not an instructor. And then decide how you're going to put the body section together. A note on this that I want to just drop into the well of your mind, and we're going to work more on it on the retreat, mirroring. I am insistent on mirroring, and I will go into this on the retreat in more detail as to why. But I want you to start wrapping your head around the fact that when you're in front of your class, you're going to be facing them, and that your left is their right and your right is their left. I'm not going to go into this now, but I want you to start wrapping your head around the idea and start practicing it. I don't care if people don't know right and left. I've trained teachers who are dyslexic. I've trained every style of teacher. I've had many teachers over the years push against the mirroring, but it's what I stick to, and I'll explain to you more on the retreat why. But start wrapping your head around the idea that you are going to one day mirror your students. Okay. And here's a little cheat for you. On your mat, write an R on the top left corner and write an L on the top right corner. Okay, there's a little cheat for you. So every time you look down at your mat, you'll remember right, left, crossed over. Okay, continued. Then consider counterposes. As we've discussed, do I need to counterpose for these, big back bends that I'm doing, etc.? Are there any contraindications which you will find in your asana book? For example, menstruation, high blood pressure. And are there any therapeutic benefits that you would like to mention during a particular posture to your students? And then how will you wind down or cool down? How long will it take? What will you do and why? What will you do during Shavasana? Will there be music, guided visualization, just silence, etc.? What pranayama, if you are teaching a pranayama, will you be teaching and why? Don't just throw a pranayama in. Why are you teaching that? How will you close your class? Okay, go back in this lecture for more information on that. Then you must get feedback from the class, and this is going to go into your assignment. So after the class, you say to everybody, okay, I want the good, but I especially want the bad and the ugly. Tell me what I did right, but most importantly, where is the room for improvement? Okay? This is your first, maybe second class ever of yoga. Maybe not. Maybe you've been teaching other modalities for a long time. But ask your students, because it's a very rare opportunity that your students are going to ever give you honest feedback, and they will do it when you're still in training. They're going to feel self-conscious to do it once you're certified. So you're going to say to them, okay, where's the room for improvement? They go, oh, the music was terrible, or you spoke too softly, or, I didn't actually understand what you meant by X, Y, and Z. Maybe you can explain it better. This is gold. This is gold, gold, gold. And we must enjoy being given all of these things so that we can fine-tune ourselves. You cannot know if you're a good chef unless people are tasting your food and giving you feedback. Too much salt, not enough sugar. So get feedback. And this is why we must teach people who we know are going to help us. Not just go, oh, that was great, thank you. That's not helpful to you at all. So get feedback, write it down, include the feedback into your assignment, please. I want to know what people are saying. Okay, it's not a judgment thing. I want to hear. Because then when we're on retreat, I want to see, your students once said that you spoke too softly. Now we're on retreat. Have you worked on that? Okay, so I want to see your progress. So all of this above, I want you to write it up as an assignment. So you're preparing a class on paper, typed, please. You can write it by hand, but then I want you to type it up for me. You're going to send that class to me when you're done. I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to ridicule it. I'm not going to tell you to change it. Nothing. That is for retreat. For now, I just want you to interact with the material. So you're going to write up a class. You're going to teach the class. You're going to write your post-class feedback, A, from your students, and B, from yourself. Okay, oh my goodness, I forgot this. I went over time. My music was too loud. I forgot to put my phone on silent, whatever. Write it all down. That whole thing is your assignment. Everything. And you send that to me. The sequence, everything I've walked you through, what went right, what went wrong, what you can improve upon from your perspective, and what worked, of course. And then the students' feedback, the good, the bad, and the constructive. All right, there's your next 2 weeks. Enjoy, have fun with this. Embrace it. There's really so much fulfillment in working to teach people yoga. Have fun, and if you get stuck on anything, post it on the group. We can share ideas. And if you really need to, then contact me and we can chat about if you've stuck with anything, if you don't want to share it on the group. All right, I look so forward to reading your experiences of teaching and hearing them in our next tutorial class. This must be done, please, by the time we have our next tutorial class, so that together we can sit and discuss what went right, what went wrong, and what are the learnings. I look forward to hearing all of this from you and to spending more time with you on our retreat together. Have a lovely day. Take care. Stay blessed. Afrishanti.